Hey guys, welcome to the Platinum to Diamond build. This time we're going to be going over something a little bit more complex than what you're used to. We're not going to be going straight bio. We're going to use a factory and we're going to build some tanks. It's going to be a really nice build that works really well against Zerg and good against Protoss. And it can fail against Terran depending on what they do. There's a few things that hard counter this. Some of those things include Cloaked Banshees, Siege Tank builds, Protoss Dark Templar builds. Those three things really hard counter this build, but everything else is going to just get absolutely demolished. And you'll be able to see the strength of this build demonstrated against our high platinum opponent over here. BCN Dead Chaos in the top left. He's going to be playing Protoss, and I am the bottom right orange Terran you've already seen on the bottom of Ohana. The opening for the build is similar to what you're used to from the gold build there. You got your 10 depot on the wall next to your ramp here, your 12 racks, and your 13 gas. The earliest part of the game is still the same, it just starts changing up after the barracks here, and I managed to catch this worker. You're going to find, now that you're this high, that players are actually going to try and scout what you're doing. And one of the best things you can do is kill that early worker to give yourself the tiniest lead. And you can see that I happen to fluke him in here and catch him with my workers and kill him off. That's good. It's not going to happen very often. So what I did here is I yanked off my SCV from my barracks by pressing T, and I started a supply depot over here, and then I pulled them off the supply depot and threw them back on the racks. What this does is it walls any workers from getting in or out of your base really quickly. And if I hadn't been able to grab that worker there between the two that I had, I would have done this. I just did it to give you guys an example, because you always want to lock that probe that gets into your base so that you can provide yourself with an easy kill and early game advantage. So after my second depot is done here, I start a factory, and my orbital command is on the same time as the last build. It's right on 17. I'm going to be producing 3 Marines out of my barracks, and then I'm going to be placing a reactor on there, and you can see I started my second gas as soon as the factory was about halfway done. As long as you start your second gas while your factory is still under construction, you're going to be fine. I'm going to be putting a few build order tips in the description of this video. There's a very good suggestion that a viewer had made. I'm not going to go back and do the older ones because the builds are really simple, and it's probably a good learning experience just getting those simple builds down just by hearing them and memorizing them yourself or taking notes. It's probably going to stick in your mind a lot better than just reading off a video description that I wrote. However, this time I'm really going to have to leave you guys some tips because it's a lot more complex than the last one. That said, I'm not going to write down like a standard build order. Like, I'm not going to say 10 depot or 12 racks or anything like that. It's just going to be a small set of rules that will help you understand the build a little bit better. If you look at the first line, you can see 3 Marines and then reactor. It's just a bunch of little tips like that that will make things a lot smoother for you. I'm not going to give you specific supply counts or times or anything like that. If you want that specific information, you're going to have to check the video yourself. I'll have everything down there in the description. I'm going to resume the game now. I was just getting ahead of myself. As soon as your orbital command here is finished, the very first worker it creates should be rallied to your gate here, and he should start building a bunker. You'll notice I lifted my barracks up off the ground and I placed it next to the factory after the 3 Marines were done, and I'm going to be putting a reactor on that shortly. The reason why you want a bunker here is because a lot of Protoss will do a very early game poke with a Stalker and Zealot, and it will kill you, or at least do significant damage, unless you have a bunker ready. So I'm going to build that. It will also protect you from a bunch of silly ALLINs, like 4 gates and a whole bunch of other stuff. It basically eliminates much of the threat a Protoss opponent can offer you in the early parts of the game. You'll also notice now that I'm also a lot more careful with my building placement than I was in previous games. You can see I'm starting to build supply depots along the edge of my base. There's a few risky points here, including like up here, over here, and over here, where a Protoss opponent can warp units into your base if they have like a low ground pylon or something like that. These depots will give you all the warning you need to prevent that type of thing from happening. It saved my life many times, and something we're going to be looking at, especially when we get to Masters, is how to use all of our buildings. So we're not just throwing down buildings in random places. We're going to use them all to see things and block things off. It'll save you a lot of games as as you continue to master StarCraft 2. So you can see as soon as the bunker has been started, I also pulled back my 3 Marines. You don't want them to get caught by the Stalker and Zealot, because that will ruin your day as well. So I'm pulling them back here, and I'm starting a tech lab on my factory. In this version of the build, I guess I didn't get my reactor right away on my barracks, so ignore what I said before. We're just going to do it the way that I'm showing you in this video. So I'm getting the tech lab right away on the factory here. I'm going to start a tank as soon as that's done, and the same worker that built that factory started a barracks right below it. So we're going to have 2 barracks here, and we're going to have a factory here building a tank. Notice that worker production was constant, and after my second barracks there, I also started an engineering bay way in the back. After my engineering bay was started, I started a 3rd barracks up with the rest of my production facilities here. You won't be producing any more Marines for a little while. We're just going to keep tank production. You want to produce 3 in a row, however don't queue them up because you need the money to build all your other buildings. As soon as your engineering bay is done, you're going to want to start +1 infantry weapons. Be careful not to get the armor. You really want the weapons, especially against Protoss. And you can see I'm still building my little defense ring of supply depots, my early warning system. And after your second tank is around halfway done, you're going to have enough gas to build a tech lab and a reactor on your barracks. And we're going to want to get those started and then queue up our 3rd tank here. We're still not producing Marines yet. And you can see as soon as the 3rd barracks was completed, I started a reactor on that one as well. After your 3 tanks are in production, we're going to start rolling all of your gas into upgrades. You can see we already started the +1 weapons from earlier. However, on our next 100 gas, we're going to want to start combat shields. And around the same time we start combat shields, we're going to want to throw a hellion onto the factory production. So we're building a hellion after the 3 tanks. You can also see I've started with Marines here. So I queued up 3 Marines. And then I'm going to have enough gas to research siege mode. And I should be doing that any second. There we go. So you got combat shield first, then siege mode, and a hellion after the 3 tanks. At this point, I'm using all my spare money to build Marines while keeping up on production of workers and supply depots. You're not going to have a lot of spare money for Marines yet. These won't be running at full capacity for another minute or so. And I start my 4th tank as soon as possible after the hellion. The reason why we got the hellion is twofold. First, we don't have enough gas to make the tank because we need to get these upgrades. And secondly, this hellion is going to scout ahead for us. This will make sure the tower is clear when we move across the map, and scout out any kind of ambush or hidden threat, like a bunch of Zerglings or Protoss coming out in the middle of the map to meet us. The bunker here is... you can salvage it whenever you feel safe. You'll probably want to salvage it after your Marine production starts. That's the latest you want to keep it. I kept mine a little late here. And soon after your 4th tank is completed, you're going to be moving out with not as many workers as normal, just like 6 or 7, and they're going to be hooked onto a tank with auto repair turned on to Autocast. So if you select your worker, you can see the repair thing down here. Just right click that, and when you got a bunch of sparkles flipping around in the button there, you know they're automatically going to repair those tanks. Before I resume the game here, I just want to go over something quickly. Just a little benchmark to know that you're getting all the gas times right. Your +1, your siege tech, and your combat shields should all be finishing within a few seconds of each other. So if you notice any kind of irregularity, you'll notice that your orders not optimal. So you're going to want to take a look at that again after. Something I didn't go over before earlier as well, when you leave the base and you pick your workers to send with your siege tanks, you're going to want to take one worker off each gas geyser because you won't be using all that gas anymore. You're going to be wanting to get more minerals so you can produce a lot of Marines. And as you can see, I actually pulled 3 workers off. You can get away with this because I believe I accidentally left 4 on a little bit longer. So you can definitely only have 3 or 4 workers here mining gas, and you'll be good to go. I'm going to resume the game now. Now, when it comes to the push, and in this case it's against Protoss, don't get too happy with your siege tanks here. Your goal against Protoss is not to leapfrog your tanks in and be really careful and slow about your push. You're going to want to kill him immediately. You're going to want to end his life as soon as possible. The only reason why we have siege mode against Protoss is so that we can fire back when he force fields us. Your siege tech should only be used to counter force fields. Anything else, and you're giving your Protoss opponent way too much time to build up enough units to push you back. The meat of this attack isn't actually the tanks, even though they do considerable damage to armored targets. You can see they do 25 damage, so that's like 3 or 4 +1 Marines shooting at one target. It's really powerful. Do not underestimate unsieged tanks. Anyways, the brunt of the damage is going to come from the +1 Marines, which actually shred Protoss units really quickly. And we're going to see how that works when we push up the ramp here. Just remember your Marine production, tank production, and worker production at home. And as we go up the ramp, most Protosses will be, swift on those force fields. That's when you want to make sure your tanks are up. That way you can shell their units so that you don't lose any halfway up the ramp here. And I'm just going to push forward, and he's just going to roll over and die. It's pretty straightforward. A Zerg game would look very similar to this. You're going to want to crash into their natural hatchery as soon as possible, and just like the Protoss, you don't want to get too happy with siege mode. It's going to slow you down a lot if you get preoccupied with making sure everything's sieged. The only time you want to be slow and careful is against banelings. If they go banelings, you're always going to want to have one tank sieged up. If you want to move tanks forward really quickly, rather than selecting them all or selecting each one and manually moving the tank up, and then when it gets to its location sieging it up again, you can also use that shift Q trick to issue multiple commands to control tanks as well. So if you select this one tank here, and you give him and you hold down shift because you're queuing commands, and you press D, he's going to start unsieging, and while you're still holding shift, you can right click over, say, by the ramp here, and then you can hold down shift again, lift your finger, and press the E button, which is the hotkey for siege, and then when you let go, that tank will unsiege, walk over here, and siege up. It's not going to take any more input from you. So you can quickly do that with this tank, quickly do another tank, and then micro the Marines. It's really quick and efficient, and it's going to come into play a lot more against Zerg. I believe that's everything for the Platinum video here. Like I said earlier, it might struggle a little bit against Terran, because I believe a lot of Banshee and tank builds are quite popular. So what I suggest doing is, if you are having trouble making this work against Terran, just go back to one of the earlier builds, or fast forward to one of the Diamond builds, and start working on that. It'll probably be a lot easier for you. That said, I will see you again on Ladder when I try this build out against live opponents in first-person view. Thank you for watching.